What has Marcus been doing? He's been in the news at times, but not for the right reasons. For a trip over to Northern Ireland, which saw him apologise later, or did he apologise later? He gave news to Manchester United the following morning that he wouldn't be at a training session because he was feeling unwell, and there was all sorts of spin put on that. And Marcus has been the subject of a lot of conversation as to whether or not his commitment is where it should be and as much as it should be on the field of play. Anyway, let's leave it to Marcus, because Marcus has let his voice be heard. He's been speaking on a neutral platform, how would you describe it, for players maybe who want to put their side of the story without any kind of media spin. It's a platform that allows players to have their say. It's called Players Tribune, and amongst a whole bunch of things, this was Marcus on his thinking, on where he's at.
Stuff that gets written about me, like 90% of it is false. They want the publicity, they want the attraction, they want people talking about anything as long as it's got their name in it. And a lot of the stories that I see about me is pretty much that. You know, there's one or two facts about the situation and the rest someone's just gone off on their own and continuing to guess what a night out or a day with me would look like, and it's difficult to stop them from doing that. But my thing is, I don't want people to be fickle and question stuff about me that, in my opinion, they should already know. The problem is when people start to believe them. It's being pushed that, oh, you're unprofessional, you're this, you're that. He goes out too much, he got too many tattoos. Whatever it is, it's when the public start to believe what they're reading.
So, a whole variety of grievances there that Marcus is reeling off, suggesting that people in the media maybe get him wrong, and people in the media maybe cite the wrong types of examples to throw up an argument against Marcus as a modern day footballer playing at probably arguably the biggest club in the world. They even talk about his body language, my jewellery, or even my tattoos. That could be you, Simon, because you don't like Premier League players, top players having tattoos.
No, I just think they're lemons. I don't think there's any individuality about it. That's my own criticism.
Before I get your take on that, Oliver Brown, chief sports writer in the Telegraph, talking about Rashford this morning, and the headline is, if Rashford wants greater respect, he should stop proving his own worst enemy. And Oliver says, the message is plain. Here's a figure of impeccable loyalty, misunderstood and essentially beyond reproach. True, the pride he articulates in wearing the United shirt is profound, but over the past few months, he's had a curious way of showing it.
I think that's relatively fair observation. I do think there's been some things written about Marcus Rashford that have been unkind and unfair, and I think one of them was about 18 months ago, which I defended on his behalf, where a journalist was very mean-spirited and written about his property portfolio and his financial wealth, and I thought, well, what the hell's that got to do with anything other than the politics of envy? Why are you writing an article like that? I think it's very difficult to, I think that's a self-indulgent whine from him on a platform that doesn't question, just allows them to be able to tell everyone how hard done by they are or what they feel is unjust. I think it's difficult to argue. Players themselves, other ex-players, and it's a taboo not to criticise players, are suggesting that he's walking around like impending doom. His performances at Manchester United, with a notable exception of a period of time last year, have been the performances of someone that looks fundamentally unhappy, doesn't feel... he doesn't embody quite the outlook that people like Anthony Martial have, which is seemingly they don't get the culture of what it's like to play for Man United and the sort of players that will get you the sack, because they're just lightweight and not worth the time. But Marcus Rashford walks around like the world is troubling him, and that there is a constant dissection of his performances because he plays for one of the most talked about football clubs in the world. His performances are hit and miss. His attitude off the pitch seems to be inappropriate judgments constantly in terms of where he thinks he should be on his birthday, why he thinks he should be able to potentially extend a period of time when he's been given some absence of leave and then not turn up the next morning for training. And these are things that a high-profile footballer playing for one of the biggest gold-fished football clubs in the world is going to get a criticism for. Then you look at his performances.
Do you believe him here when he says, my family turned down life-changing money when I was a kid so I could wear this badge?
I don't doubt it. I don't know what that means and what that means in terms of the opportunities he's got at Man United, but I assume by going to Man United he wasn't going to be a pauper. I assume that ultimately by going to Man United and being given the opportunities that Man United afford you, he's going to be a very successful young man, and as it happens, that's what he is economically. I do think that a lot of the criticism about his performances on the field, his outlook, his disposition, the judgment calls that he appears to have made, whether it's having a surgery after the European Championships, going on holiday and then deciding to have surgery rather than prioritising his club, whether it's selecting a place to go to have his birthday. But more importantly, all of this stems from one poison tree, his performances on the pitch.
And you think he lacks commitment?
I think he lacks resolution and determination and application. I do not think he's as good a player as people have built him up to be, and I think that's also unfortunate because he's characterised in a way that he's a world-class footballer and he's not. So he's judged by that.
So Simon's looking at his performances on the field of play, and is it hard to argue with this? Again, Oliver Brown in the Telegraph, Martin. The loss at Newcastle captured it all. Prior to his 61st minute substitution, Rashford was pictured barely jogging at times, neglecting to track back. One verdict was especially withering. He needs to sort his head out. He's not working hard enough. The person who uttered these words, Nicky Butt, the head of United's academy, who's known Rashford since he first joined, age 7.
You know, I think this is a very sincere young man. I think he feels very strongly, and he feels a bit hurt. But I don't see someone who's necessarily taking responsibility for his actions. And if I was in his camp, I wouldn't be talking about, it's a privilege to play for Manchester United. I wouldn't be confusing the wealth that's involved in going somewhere else with the privilege of playing for Manchester United. If this helps him to get it off his chest and to play well, then fair enough. But to me, I just would want him focused. I wouldn't want him to be worrying about public opinion. I wouldn't want him to be worrying about former players. It's put your energy into winning games for Manchester United. And his focus isn't there at the moment. And it's kind of like a player that you watch him and you feel he's not completely engaged. It's like, you know, is he too aware of what's going on around him? Is he too self-conscious? Just get in there and score the goals you scored last year. He scored 30 goals last season. He's only managed 5 this season. He's had copious amounts of shots, 55 shots this year. Something isn't quite right with the way he's applying himself. It was without the ball, Jim, where you can see it. It's kind of like, don't take it on board, but improve. Everybody wants to see him do well. This summer, hopefully, we'll be seeing him doing it wonderfully well in an England shirt. So everybody wants to see him. And when you're a young man at the top of your game, it seems like the world's on his shoulders. Now, he went off to Northern Ireland. For some reason, Jim, inexcusable, a couple of days before a game. That was immensely unprofessional. I'd have been apologising for that. First of all, guys, look, don't ever question my commitment. That I took a wrong step. But now I'm back.
Do you question his commitment on the field of play?
I just think it's about focus. I've met him. I've had the pleasure of meeting him. I did something with him a few years ago for McDonald's. He turned up to meet, greet, talk to people. He went beyond that. We couldn't get him off the pitch. He was playing a small-sided game. He loves football. He loves football. You just got to get him back in the right mode. I put that down. Ten Hag has to help him here. He needs support around him, but I don't know necessarily if it's a good idea. Jim, people say, do your talking on the pitch. But players...
But he's cloaking his perspective in victimhood. It's nothing to do with him.
Maybe his support. Yeah. Maybe his support base is emotionally too attached. Because I feel that sometimes when family have to hear criticism, it hurts them just as much, and it hurts you to see it happening. And then you come out and speak.
But that's the reality of being a man in the world, and ultimately the privileged position that you're in is you're playing for one of the best football clubs in the world. You're economically at a level that most people don't really dream of, and yet you don't seem to understand the responsibility. You make judgment calls, and then you're crying potentially to a platform that's indulging this whining mentality.
Strip away all the money. If you gave him a magic wand, what does he want most?
Well,
he's got to want to be successful for Manchester United. If that is not there, then there's a problem.
And then you look at that, and you look at his reaction to adversity. If this was a constant stream of praise and endless praise, you wouldn't hear him sitting on a platform saying, "I am so grateful for this praise. I am so grateful for the support that I've got. It makes my life so much more easy." When it becomes about adversity and challenges, and people write unfair things and people say unkind things, we live in an unkind world, but they only write it because you're giving them the ammunition. If your performances on the pitch, and there is this focus, like there is this focus on Aaron Ramsdale when earlier on in the season, when the cameras immediately turned to Ramsdale on the pitch to see what he on the dugout on the sideline to see what he's doing.
Yeah.
So there is this focus on his body language, but he has created this narrative. It is he that's created it. It's him that's not performing at a high level. There wasn't this criticism for him last season. It goes with the territory. And to do this sort of cleansing of one's soul and letting people know that he feels hard done by and it's not fair and ultimately he's being judged in an unfair prism, I think is rather childish.
There's a huge reaction to this. We'll probably carry on the other side of 10:30 regardless. But Rashford has said a whole bunch of things. I can take any criticism. I can take any headline from podcasts, social media and newspapers. I can take it. But if you start questioning my commitment to this club and my love for football and bring my family into it, then I'd simply ask you to have a bit more humanity about you. Where's your head with Marcus Rashford? Many of you getting in touch. Judge is a Liverpool fan. I met Marcus briefly, recently. Even though he was kind enough to engage with everybody, it just seems sad. It's a real shame. And there's Rob. Good God, can this guy just stop doing these random virtuous interviews and actually show some consistency and get a bit of form going on the field of play? It seems that people are running out of patience with Marcus Rashford. What's your take on it? 03717 223344 81089. Marcus Rashford has been speaking to this neutral platform that players occasionally use, Players Tribune, kind of defending himself from any outside criticism, outside noise, if you like, regards him as a player, regards what he does away from the field of play. And Marcus is saying a whole variety of things. It can't just be about me as a 26-year-old lad on a night out or a lad getting a parking ticket. It's got to be about how much my car costs, guessing my weekly salary, my jewellery, even my tattoos. It's got to be about my body language and questioning my morals and speculating about my family and my football future. There's a tone to it that you don't get with all footballers. Let's just leave it at that.
I don't know what he's implying there. I mean, ultimately, football is all about money. It is all about money. It's all about money for the broadcasters. It's all about money for the clubs. It's all about money for the players. It's all about money in the transfer window. We see footballers as the highest paid athletes now in world sport. It's all about money, and the players themselves have in part made that. So you can't have all the benefits and then turn around and say people make it all about money. I don't know what he's implying there. Is he implying...
Are salaries relevant, though?
No, they're not. But I don't like it. You know, I've said to you on previous occasions when Dele Alli was robbed, what's the price of his watch got to do with it? What's the car he's driving got to do with it? So I'm in his camp. But this is the animal, this is the nature of the beast, and you have to get on with it. But when he goes on to talk about... If you ever question my commitment to Man United, that's when I have to speak up. It's like someone questioning my entire identity and everything I stand for as a man. I'll quit the drum roll. This isn't EastEnders, boom, boom, boom. If ultimately you're not applying yourself on the pitch, people are going to make this obligation.
Yes,
Don't accentuate it and exaggerate it. If you're not performing at a high level in a team that's underperforming full stop, then people are going to question you.
Yes.
And you have to get on with that. And the way that you prove them wrong is by proving them wrong on the pitch. And you do not do that.
You see, Simon's nailed it there, has he not, Martin? Again, Oliver Brown in the Telegraph. Rashford has fallen off in every department this season. With his goal against Tottenham last month, his first at Old Trafford in more than 16 hours of play.
Do you know the thing about the journalism? And we had this with Sterling, didn't we? That every single time there was an article, it had to start with the player's wages. It had to, if he crashed his car, it was the £2 million, the £250,000 car with the player that earns £300,000 a week. It's kind of like, and that's been pulled now. If you look at what's been written around Sterling, so maybe they understand that a little bit. They're just getting fed up with the fact that there's always this reference to the money he earns. And Simon, though, is right to a certain extent. You just have to ignore it. I think the biggest problem in all of this is that he's got family members that are emotionally attached, too involved, and I don't think you should have that when you're being advised by people at the top end, because when emotion creeps in, Jim, and I think they probably suffered as well, they can hear it in the stands, can't they? They can hear the fans disgruntled, not happy, talking about wages, and I think the player just needs to separate all of that and just go out there and play his football. I admire to a certain extent that he wants to talk about it, but it wouldn't be the advice I'd be giving him. I'd be saying, okay...
He doesn't want to talk about it, Martin. He wants a platform to tell everybody how hard done by is by. And whilst I concur, I do not like...
That's the danger of coming out.
I do not like the politics of envy in the media that constantly focus on what people
it's there, don't worry. It's there in life.
I agree. Right. But here's the thing. You are in such a position where you're getting paid such an enormous amount of money. If the trade-off is people are going to mention it, you know what? You can go back to the minimum wage if you'd prefer, no one talks about it, or you can earn your bloody money. You can be worth these obscene salaries that are being paid to footballers, and you can get on with the slings and arrows of the position you've been put in because you've been given life-changing money as a result of football's explosion and broadcaster demands and your talent too, the talent you've got is disproportionate to the money that you're getting. So why don't you get on with the ramifications, not you personally, Martin, of course, the ramifications of people criticising you through the prism of finance. Whatever it is, wherever we live in this society, people are going to find an angle to find a way to criticise you.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.